Here is our coach Commando. It's a well-deserved rest after playing with his gear, and right now he's dreaming of more, but he's not alone. Danger lurks around, and it's getting closer every moment. Unexpected. Knock, 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 knock. Hey you, tactical slave. Wake up. What do you think, you will be lying like this the whole day? You weren't created to do nothing. Your purpose is to build HPA GBBRs. Do you hear me? Wake up right now. Everybody is waiting for the new video. Now, get up, get up. And so our couch commando wakes up with a pair of M110s GBBRs from VFC, because it's time to make them run on HPA. Hello and welcome again to Frog Manual, and this time this is episode number 7. The episode number 7 we will be looking at the conversion for AR10 type of guns from VFC, which actually means the SR25, M110 and M110K. Also the SR25 EC, the long and short version is the same. Maybe in future there will be some more guns with the similar design inside. For now these 4 will use the conversion, and I'll show you how to assemble it to the gun. As usual, there will be 4 chapters this time. The assembly is kind of simple one. The gun is big, similarly to HK417, so the process is pretty easy. There will be assembly of the conversion. We will assemble the conversion to the gun as the second step. The third step will be assembly of the hose to the gun, obviously, and the fourth step will be testing. But before we start with all of this, let's have a look what the conversion consists of. You'll see everything is lying here on the screen. The first thing and the most important is the conversion itself. So a little different than the others, but generally the idea is the same. We have a 3D printed speed loader. This is the version 2.3. Maybe in future there will be a new revision, let's see. There are 2 magazines 3D printed, dedicated for the AR10 type of guns. The capacity is 20, you can switch it to 40. Obviously the magazines are 3D printed, and as all 3D printed parts, also as the speed loader, the models will be published soon on my codes and the printables account, and you can print them yourself, obviously. There will be also a manual how to put them together. So 2 magazines, and we have some more parts for the guns. So the nice Knight's Armament type trigger guard assembled to the pneumatic hose. There is the sleeve for the hose, US type QD connector, 3 pieces of heat shrinking tube to be used to finish the hose, and 3 screws, the headless screw type M3x5. They will be used to attach the trigger guard to the gun, and 1 tiny M2.5x8 screw to attach the conversion to the gun. Probably you would never have guessed, but for making this conversion, mounting this to a gun, we need beep 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 beep, the gun itself. And yeah, I'll be modifying it. It obviously has to be a GBBR. You see that I already replaced, for example, the pistol grip here, so this will be tiny bit different for the assembly of the hose, but generally it's a fully representative, perfect example. So having said that, let's take the gun and let's put it aside. We only need the magazine for the first stage. The first stage will be very similar to what we always do in all the conversions. So we need to replace the top seal from the magazine to the conversion, and the same with the valve there on top. It will go into the conversion. So conversion has to wait a moment, and right now we need to disassemble the magazine. The first thing that we need to do is to make sure that really the magazine is empty. So either you shoot until the gas is out, or you press the valve and release the gas. Be careful not to freeze your hand. Press this valve with some kind of tool. The gas will be cold and stinky, that's why you should target the magazine away from yourself, and the best, release the gas to the air outdoors. Okay, so now we remove these top two screws, and while doing this we need to hold this black plastic part down because it's under tension from the spring, and it will pop out and can kill an innocent being with its sheer force and power. So be very careful. We remove these two screws, they are out, and now carefully take this out. Okay, we only need the seal, so it's in here. Okay, let's make sure that it's good, yeah, not damaged. It's the HK417 type seal, the same one here. Let's remove those parts. Generally the only part that we need is that valve in the seal, so everything else we can put aside. Now extracting the valve, we can either use a flat screwdriver and be careful with unscrewing it, or we can use a special tool for the valves. I happen to have one, obviously, therefore unscrewing the valve. And when the valve is out, make sure that all the seals on the valve are in place and that they are not damaged. So there should be 3 of them, first one here, second one here, the third one here. It happens often in VFC that this one stays in the magazine, so you need to take it out and put back here. And you can lube them tiny bit with some silicone spray oil, like take it on your finger and just rub it slightly, and this would be enough. If you use your valve, mine is brand new, but if you have a valve that was in some use, you can clean it, because obviously if the valve will not be working properly, then the gun will not be working properly, yeah? So this is an important part. So, and now we will mount the valve to the conversion, so we just throw it in here from the rear into this hole. We take the key and we rotate the valve counterclockwise until it clicks, and when it happens it means that the threads are properly aligned, and then we are screwing this nicely in. This is how it looks like when the valve is in, and we can push on it to make sure that it springs back, which it does, and make sure it's really tight, because otherwise the air could leak, right? Then we remove these 2 top screws from here, and now really simply we put the seal over the conversion so its sides go into these grooves around. It might need a little help to compress it. Okay, and then obviously we put back the cover here. It's called the conversion cap, and we throw in back those 2 screws and we tighten them. Okay, so right now everything's okay, everything's fine. So the conversion is ready to be mounted into the gun, and the first stage is over. Now the second stage. We will attach the conversion right now, and for this we need to create some attachment points, as usual. And, as usual, we will use 2 of those. As in the AR10 family, this area with the valve knocker called the firing pin retainer, mag release, ambidextrous bolt catch, you know, it's kind of complicated geometry here, let's say. It's hard to find an attachment point. So I thought about this a moment, and I decided that finally we will attach to the firing pin retainer. So first we need to extract that part. In order to do this, we need to disassemble the bolt catch, the ambidextrous one. So first we undo this screw and we pull it out completely. And when it is out, we can lift this arm to remove it. In my case, I have a modification, so I cannot directly pull it out. In the original M110, this is completely loose, so when the bolt catch catches, the arm goes up. But if the bolt catch is in the, let's say, neutral position, it does not catch the slide, then this is flying around because there is no return spring. So I added one, and I'll make a separate video about this modification. In your case, you would be just able to remove it. In my case, I need to disconnect it from this lever underneath. In your case the lever would be out, in my case it stays basically. Then we remove the bolt catch arm on this side. It also has a screw, but here on the side. When the screw is out, then we can just take out this arm. And in your case the spring, which is here, exactly here, would fall out basically. In my case it stays, and I'll do some special trick to take it out. Now we need to remove the screws holding the firing pin retainer in the body. One is here, one is here. And when also those screws are removed, you will be able to basically pull it up. In my case I need to disconnect that modified rod for the bolt catch. And it's out. So in your case this spring would be loose and the arm would be loose. Yeah, in my case they are connected and they stay here. And be careful not to lose this spring and the steel part, which is the firing pin reset. So we take it out, we put it aside, and we will be working on this part. Due to the complexity of that part, it was really hard to find proper attachment points on it. So I decided that the conversion will be attached in 2 points like this. One point would be here in this hole, and the second one is this one, which will use actually that screw that normally would be here. And in order to allow this, we need to file off a part of this steel part to replace it with the conversion, yeah, so that the conversion would go here and slide all the way in instead of that part. Then when we will do that filing and we are able to slide the conversion to its final position, we will put it here and mark the center of this hole to drill and thread a hole through that support bolt catch feature, similar to what we do in the HK416 AR15 type conversions. Yeah, so this will be, let's say, a two-stage modification, and I'll do it step by step, showing you how this progress goes, like explaining every single step. Let's start from the disassembly of this part. There are steel parts inside that we don't want to modify, and they will get full of debris if we do it all together. For this reason we have one screw here and one screw here, which we need to undo. And when we pull out those two screws, you see parts separate. We have the firing pin here, yeah, with the pin and this arm inside. Let's not do anything with it, put it aside. And we also have that return spring for the firing pin. And here we are left with two halves. In your case, this part would be already free, yeah, it would not be hanging here like in my case. This is due to that modification I'll talk about in a different video. As usual, we want to clean this up so that no grease or dirt stays. It will ease removal of the debris after the modification, and we do it to the both halves. Now that I have my two halves in a clean state, let's say, I can start the modification. If we look from the top, the one with this sticking feature on the side here and this space for the screw in the front of, let's say, the gun, this is the one we start with. So as explained, we need to modify it in such way that the conversion, this elevated portion of the conversion here, could go here instead of this elevated portion. Yeah? So if you check it side by side like this, you will see that they are more or less, depending on the tolerances, of the same height. So we want to file this portion so low that it reaches this surface, yeah? So just to be even. And in practice this is 3 millimeters. The conversion has a little side clearance, so it does not have to be all the way. And this side wall here can stay. Right now you see that small gap between the conversion and that half of the firing pin retainer, so we want to more or less keep it this way. It will be the simplest when I do the modification off screen, and I will show you how it looks like. So that's exactly what I'm about to do now. I will remove that material, I will prepare it to the final state, and I will show you the results so that you can better understand what I'm talking about. Here you can see how it looks like after the modification. So basically this portion is removed. and this is flush with this surface here. That wall is left. So how I did it, I used a Dremel with this type of tool. So first I removed the material like this, going lower, lower, lower and lower. When I was close to the final height I wanted to reach, I took a bigger tool like this one, and I went from inside to the outside, lower and lower, lower and lower and lower. And finally, when I saw that I'm like 0.2 millimeters above that surface, I took a regular hand file and I finished the surface with the hand file, making it even. You can see that I started to scratch also on that surface because it was on the same level, and the same I did here on the side. And finally, I made sure that there are no sharp edges. I removed them all over the part, and obviously I cleaned it up. So that's how it looks right now. And if I put the conversion against it, here you can see how it fits. Yeah? So that's exactly what we need. So now we will mount these halves together, but without the components, because we will open it in a minute again. And we need to screw it back. So one screw goes here and one screw goes here, as it was screwed together previously. And with these halves assembled, you can again try how the conversion fits. So if I look from this perspective, I see where the hole for the screw shall be. I want to put this side of the conversion aligned with the side of the steel part here. And from the height point of view, it has to be 0.5 millimeter lower than this top edge of that rib here, this one. Yeah, so the proper alignment looks more or less like this. I have a 0.5 millimeter of that rib on the firing pin retainer above the conversion, and I put some sharp tool into the hole to mark the center of it. Then I will drill a hole, so let's first mark that point. So I have my center for the hole marked here. If I put the conversion over the part and I keep that distance of 0.5 millimeter here on the top, I can see this cross in the middle. I cannot really show it on camera. So what I can tell you to help is that this cross is around 4.14 millimeters from this wall, how like the way I measure right now, and from this bottom edge here it's more or less 2.2 millimeters. Generally we will be using an M2.5 screw to attach in here, and the hole here is 3 millimeters, so we have some space in case the screw does not end up perfectly where it should be. It's done in a way that the conversion will move, and it can make up for this imprecise marking if it happens. Then I go with the drilling. I do it the usual way like I showed in other videos. This is made of steel. I go first with a 1.5 millimeter drill, then 2.05, which would be the starting diameter for threading. I'll show you the stages when I'm finishing one after the other. So here I have my hole, it's already 2.05. When I put the conversion to see the fitting and I align it properly, you see this hole there in the middle. So it's exactly like I wanted. Now when we have the hole, we need to add the M2.5 thread through entire length of it. And for this we will use a hand threading tool, and I have these two bits, and if you are familiar with the use, they are marked with 1 cut, 2 cuts or 0 cuts. I'm using only the 1 and 2. The 0 cuts is like a final thread. I don't want to really do it. The GBBRs, you know, they are very well known for losing screws and so on. So if I use only these two bits for creating the thread, it will be a little tight, and the screw should stay in place even when we shoot and so on. So first we go with the single cut, we put it into the tool, and if you watched my other videos you already know the method, but I'll repeat it for those who watch only this one. Basically, because this is a steel part, it's hardened, it can easily break the threading tool, so we need to dip it in regular edible oil, not like a gun grease or something, regular edible oil, pure fat, and we put the threading tool into the hole, and the procedure is very simple. We go one full rotation, so half full rotation, second half, and then we retract half rotation back. So again, we go for one full rotation and then half rotation back, one full rotation and half rotation back, and we continue until the tool is completely through. So I'll do it off screen. So after we are done with the first tool, we clean it up and we use the second one. Obviously first some oil, and when we put it into the hole, we need to first match the threads. So I rotate it counterclockwise, it will click, and then I'll start to go. Again, one full rotation, half rotation back, one full rotation, half rotation back. If it starts to jam, basically you need to undo the tool completely, clean it up and start over. And with this, threading is complete. So now we want to remove the debris, and look carefully from the rear side. There are no sharp remains sticking from the hole, because it will impair the bolt catch function. Bolt catch is moving in this groove, so we don't want any obstruction. So cleaning this up, when it's cleaned up, we actually can test how the screw works. We take our M2.5 times 8 screw and we basically put it in the hole and we screw it all the way till the end. It should go in a little tight. You see it already came on the other side. With this we also removed some debris, so we can now remove it. So now it will be the time to completely reassemble the firing pin retainer assembly. Probably you already know. We remove these two screws. Again, in your case, this rod here would be removed. And here we take this thin wire spring, we put it in this groove, and we take the hammer too with this pin depressed, and we need to, let's say, squeeze the spring with that pin and put the hammer inside. Before you do it, obviously relube the parts and make sure everything's clean. Now I compress the spring, I put it in, and I check if the hammer goes back. So it does. And then I'm closing it inside. And after the hammer is in, I put in also these two screws, tighten them. And again I check the function. If the hammer goes back, everything's okay. And now on this side we will be putting this arm here, but before we do it, we throw in there some lube, obviously, then the part, and this thick wire spring goes here. So the part should spring when pushed, and the spring is back. Be careful because it likes to pop out, yeah? If it shoots out, it's hard to find. Now we drop this back into the gun. For this we take the lower receiver, obviously, and we drop in the part. In my case, because of that modification I already talked about a few times, it's a little more difficult, because I must make sure that the rod goes through the body in parallel with the insertion of the trigger block, in parallel with the insertion of this firing pin retainer. Okay. So the part is inside, and first we add that screw. This is the longer one, so we throw it in, and we need to obviously screw it. And while doing this, be careful, because these threads are not so great in the receiver. So definitely you want to rotate this counterclockwise so that the threads match, and then tighten it, because it's easy to damage those threads. Make sure it's tight. And right now we can put in our conversion. It goes like this, and here you will see that this corner actually collides with the receiver, right? So there is a tiny gap, and this sharp corner on the conversion collides with the radius here on the receiver. So here in this area, this is actually a little funny, because originally when I saw this I thought like, okay, so we will make a sharp corner here, it will not fit, and somebody will just take a file a part of body in here, and the conversion will go in, which basically is extremely stupid, because there could be a blend on the side just fitting to the gun. And for future I might implement this, but in the conversions right now probably I will apply it manually to all of them, otherwise it makes not much sense. This is the first gun of this type I ever assemble, by the way, maybe that's interesting. So some things like this can happen. When this obstacle is removed and the conversion fits here nicely, we can attach it, and we have this M3x25 screw that should go in here. But at least in my gun, this screw is kind of short, and I actually know the reason why, because the standard screws are M3x25, then the next one is M3x30, and M3x30 is too long to be placed here. So they used M3x2.5, which is actually a tiny bit too short, and it wears out the thread very quickly because it barely catches it. So what I recommend to do is get yourself a screw like this one, M3x30, just shorten it like 2 millimeters. You will see when you screw it how much longer than needed it is. And I advise you to just shorten it to the proper dimension, and this way you will have good connection. Also on this side you will not have this weak screw that moves around and tends to fall out. It does not really serve its purpose. So when the screw is properly fitting, you see it's a different type because I chose proper length. We screw it but not all the way, so that the conversion still is a little loose, and we attach the second screw. This time the one from the conversion, M2.5x8, through this hole into the steel part here. So you see the screw is in, and there is this cutout to allow you to access it, and we go all the way. So we leave it a little loose like this one, and actually at this stage we can reassemble the bolt catch. First this arm goes here, then this longer screw here. Okay, and my spring was already there. And now on this side you would throw your second lever, but already with this arm. As my gun is modified a little, I need to lift the arm, put the lever over. And then the second screw here. And for now it's enough. We will set the height of the conversion in a moment, but first we need to start working on the trigger guard. So now we have the lower receiver. We will start with removal of the trigger guard. We do it as usual in AR type guns. So here the pin, it releases the trigger guard, and then there is a second pin here, but we have to pinch out. Nothing new in our GBBR adventures. When the pin is out, the trigger guard can be taken out, and we won't use it anymore. We need to take off the pistol grip, and you can see that I already replaced it with some different type. This is the original one, but for that build I want this one. It doesn't really change much if this is the original one or any other. The order of things you need to do is exactly the same. So let's take it out. There is one screw, big one, deep in there. We just take proper tool and we remove it. When the pistol grip is removed, the screw will fall out probably, yeah? So it looks like this. We can put this aside. And here what's important is that there are two pins here. One is for locking of the rear pin and one is for selector position. You don't want to lose the springs or the pins from the inside, so I recommend you pull them out basically, yeah, and put them aside. So now when we've done it, we can take our beautiful Knight's Armament style trigger guard, and what we need to do is to push this into the connector, the end of the hose into this connector here on the conversion, but make sure that it goes all the way in. Sometimes it happens that you don't push it all the way in. You can a little like pre-bend this hose to make it fit a little easier, and basically we just take it and it has to go all the way in. Okay, so in my case it did. The trigger guard more or less will fit here, but we will set it up in a moment. What we need to do right now is to make sure that the conversion is properly aligned with the bolt carrier group. So we can leave this. Let's remove these parts further away. And we need to assemble the upper receiver. So now with the upper receiver assembled, we want to make sure that there is no, let's say, too big pressure from the seal and the conversion on the bolt carrier group. So when you charge the gun, you can see that the nozzle stays in place, and it should stay like this almost to the end of the travel of the bolt carrier group. So this is the correct behavior. Let's do this again. Yeah, and now this means that the nozzle is pressed with big pressure against the gasket on the conversion. This pressure cannot be too big, because in case it will be, then the gasket can get caught in the bottom of the nozzle, it can collide somehow, it will be torn apart, whatever, after like 1,000 or 5,000 shots, you know. So what you need to do is to make sure that this is properly aligned, and we will set the level of the conversion this way that we need to loosen the screws of the mount. I already said about this, and then here we can pull the conversion back with the we can pull the conversion back by mounting the trigger guard in such a position that the hose pulls the conversion down. Yeah, so we need to find a balance. So in case you need to move the trigger guard, you just rotate this on the hose and push it along, yeah, so to find the correct position. And when you will take the gun like this, you can look inside there, it will be hard to catch, and make sure that you don't see big deformation of the seal on the conversion when you do this reloading. Yeah, so you want to look in there, see if the seal is not like massacred by the nozzle as it moves forward, and it's not too compressed when it moves, when you pull the bolt carrier group back. And how to judge if that's okay or not. So now you can see this interface of the seal and the nozzle connected together, right? And you can see that the nozzle goes a little bit further to the front than the seal is, the bottom of the nozzle, and this is correct. If it will be pushed too hard against each other, the seal will be deformed because the nozzle will pull it to the front, and it will not retain its, let's say, original shape, but the front of that gasket will be pulled towards the chamber, yeah? So it will be an arc formed to the front where the magazine lips appear, and this will be the incorrect assembly. Yeah? In my case, you can see that it's pretty nice, because the gasket has its original shape. There is a contact between it and the nozzle, so everything seems perfectly fine. So in this case, when everything is fine, we can proceed on. Of course, you can remember, if you realize that something is wrong later on during shooting or something, nothing's lost. You can always readjust this by removing the screws that will attach the trigger guard, loosening the screws that attach the conversion, and you know. Okay, so it looks okay for now. Let's leave it like this for the moment, and now let's do the pistol grip change. So what we need to do is basically drill a hole through the front of the pistol grip, and again I'm using a different one, but it makes no difference for the process. So basically we need to get in. I'll drill the hole, I'll show you how it looks like. It looks like this. We have a hole here, it goes all the way inside. And right now I can put the hose through it, and here a little hint, because with the regular stock guns and stock grips, the hose will easily fit between the screw and the pistol grip, but sometimes if you use like these real firearm pistol grips like this one, this type of screw might obscure this opening through which you need to put the hose. So in this case, it's also good to use a different type of screw, like for example this one. It's lower, it's spherical here on the head. This is an M6 by 25, so in my case I will need to use this one. Of course, remember to put the parts here back in, so both pins here and here. Smaller spring goes here, and the bigger spring goes here. And now again, two options. So either you can throw the screw in first and then put through the hose, or sometimes it's easier the other way around. So first insert the hose and then put screw in, depends on the particular grip you are using. In my case I will start with the screw. So I have the screw in place, as you see now, the hose, and when I push the hose you can see it will go out on the other side here. So just align it properly and screw the pistol grip in place. The pistol grip is attached, so we can check the functionality. For sure the spring for the selector and for the pin here are fine. You can see it works. So now we can attach the trigger guard, and after this step you might try again if for sure the conversion is aligned properly, like I explained. Like theoretically it's possible that when wiggling with all of this you moved it a little, yeah, so just to be sure. And then after you make sure it's okay, we will take these tiny worm screws and we will screw them into these holes, and there is one on the other side to fix the trigger guard in place. And here it's good to use some Loctite or super glue type adhesive, because this will vibrate like crazy and it happens very often that these screws fall out. So first let's do the front one. I just demonstrate, and the rest of them you do exactly the same way. So basically I'll show the result, I'll do it off screen. So I apply a little glue on the top of the screw, and I need to push the trigger guard inside, make sure the holes are aligned of course, and then with a quick move, not to spill the glue, I will drop the screw into the hole here and proceed with the screwing. And yeah, the first one is ready. So the same here and on the other side. As I said, I'll do it off screen. This is how it looks like, it's firmly in place. One more important thing here I forgot to mention: when you attach the trigger guard and you insert these screws, you screw them in, sooner or later they will start to push on the hose and they can clamp it, rendering it unfunctional. Obviously, like, you don't want to do it. The screws are of such length that they should be flush with the receiver here, so you just need to screw them so deep that when you put your finger here you don't really feel any bump coming from the screw, and not more than this. Yeah, so this way you make sure that they are in safe distance and the hose is unobstructed. So here we can do some final checks that everything's fine, everything's working. Pretty simple, identical to the other guns. So first, make sure that the nozzle works, it's okay. Make sure that this engagement of the nozzle and the gasket on the conversion is the good one, like I explained earlier. Make sure you set it up properly. And now let's test the bolt catch mechanism. We will need a magazine for it, so we put an empty magazine inside and we pull the charging handle. So obviously when the bolt carrier group will go over this position, when the bolt catch opens, it should catch, and it should happen regardless of the speed, how fast you do it. So if I pull it like this, yeah, it should catch, and you see it caught. So let's release it and try again. So again, I pull it, and here, not yet, but here there is this position, and the bolt catch should catch in place. One thing you want to check: when the bolt catch is engaged, you can pull the charging handle a little more to the rear, and make sure by pressing on the bolt catch from the other side that this is really the final position, that it's not like the bolt catch moved, let's say, half of the angle or whatever, and it barely catches the bolt carrier group. You want to make sure that it's really properly engaged. So looking from this side, when you pull the bolt carrier group to the very end, you can press here on the bottom of the bolt catch and it should not move. In case you would get some partial movement, let's say it's partially engaged, and you are able to push it more, this probably means that there is some collision somewhere. So you need to have a look into the gun and see if there is no friction occurring because some misalignment of the parts and so on. But in this case, when I press, nothing happens, it's the final position. Actually, the bolt catch in these AR10 type guns from VFC, it has very small movement, yeah, so it might look like it barely moves, but that's the whole range of motion. Then I can release the bolt carrier group, press the bolt catch, everything works. You can do this check a few times just to make sure everything's fine. And when you make sure that everything's fine, you will need to tighten the conversion in place, because you remember we left it loose for this setting of the height. So for this we need to take the upper receiver off, and again we remove the magazine and we take off the upper receiver. And with the lower receiver in our hands, it's good to first insert the magazine to make sure the conversion will be in proper position, and then tighten both screws, this one and this one. It cannot be like a complete maximum, not to damage some threads or whatever. In my case it's done. So after this final tightening of the screws, you might check again if everything's fine, if the bolt carrier group is properly engaging with the gasket, if everything works. So if everything here is fine, we can do the next test. We need the complete gun, and we will blow into the hose and check if the valve resets properly. So first of all, we need to make sure that we charge the gun. So theoretically, when you put it on safe, it means that it's charged. So we charge the gun, we check that it's on safe, and right now when you blow through the hose, it should not release any air, so you should not be able to. So let's try, maybe you will hear. So I'm not able to blow through the hose, and right now I'm gonna put the gun on fire. Let's pull the trigger. So right now the valve is pressed in, yeah, and when it's pressed in, I should be able to blow through the hose. Hopefully you could hear that I was able to do it. And right now I want to charge the gun again and put it on safe, so for sure it's reloaded, and the valve should reset. Right now I should not be able to blow through the valve anymore, which I am not able to do. So the valve resets properly, it's okay. So for this last step we will use our 3 heat shrinking tubes, the connector and the hose. And actually I have a cap for this grip. I made a little cutout in it, so at the very end I will attach it here so that the pistol grip is complete. Obviously if you have the regular A2 type grip you don't have any cap, but that's, let's say, a little hint in case you wonder how to route the hose in your gun. Generally the hose and the sleeve will be probably a little longer than you need, so first you can try it out and see how this looks like. In my case it goes pretty deep inside. I don't want that long hose here, so I'm gonna shorten both. For the hose you just cut it with the knife, just make sure it's pretty clean, not some, you know, part like debris sticking around, yeah, so I'll cut it here. Actually this hose was pre-cut for my gun previously, so yours probably will be much longer, yeah? So I remove it, I do 14 centimeters here for my liking. And for this hose, normally it comes in 25 centimeters length. On the hose it will be tiny bit shorter. So I'm gonna try it. And on this side you want it to be like 2 centimeters, maximum 3 centimeters inside. So you see that it's a little longer, and I'm gonna cut it off like ½ millimeter shorter than the hose underneath, yeah? So I'll hold it with my hand, I'll slide it, and here with regular scissors. And right now we need to melt that end, because it will be undoing this sewing, yeah? So just melt this with a heat gun, or just simply with, you know, some lighter, but obviously don't burn yourself and your home, yeah? So I'm applying some heat here, and this is important to make that melted part quite big, because when the heat shrinking tube is over it, it will prevent that from sliding. And when it's still hot and melted, I insert the clamps here to make it a little bigger. This will be easier to insert this on the hose. Okay, so I have it in the size I like, and I'm gonna put it here on the hose, and then I'm gonna put the sleeves over it. They are 5 centimeters. I believe you also don't need that much, but that's up to you. So I shortened this one. This is the smallest one, and I put it first. Okay, this one is on. Then I put this middle one. So again, I'm gonna shorten it a little, and I put it on. And the big one can wait. Now I take the QD connector. I'm taking off the cap. The cap has to go on the hose like this, and I need to squeeze this in so that the hose will reach this threaded part. So all the way in. And when it's all the way in, I need to tighten the nut here, and I want it to be much more to like cover the complete thread at least. Okay, and when this is done, I can pull the sleeve here, and to prevent some sliding, I will take the glue again, apply a dot on this side, on the other side, and pull it into the place. And when it's here, I'm gonna slide the sleeve over so that it goes into this gap here, and that's the position in which I want to shrink the tube. So let's do it. Okay, this one is ready. So now let's take this sleeve, let's move it back, and we need to pull this part of this of the heat shrinking tube over the end here so that it's more or less in half, and shrink it in this position, and make sure it does not stick to the hose. So when shrinking, try to move it a bit to the sides. So it looks like this, it moves a little, so let's set it straight. And it's good to now see how far deep it will go when you extend this completely. Yeah, so just try it, straighten it out nicely. Okay, see more or less when it ends up inside. So a little deeper here. And now let's pull it out, and in this place where it was reaching, let's add another drop of glue. And now I need to catch the sleeve here on the rear after behind this thicker part and slide it very quickly inside. So I have it, it's moving, yeah, and I slide it all the way in over the glued part to this maximum position you can see, and basically it will attach there. Okay, so in my case I can put the cap on. So I'm left with this biggest part of the heat shrinking tube, so I just put it on the connector like this. It will go over here. The best is to make it reach over this wide part when where the hose is melted, yeah? And again we need to shrink that. And it's nicely shrinked. We only need to cut off any excess on this side to make sure that it won't obscure the connection when you put the female socket onto that. In my case this is how it looks like finished. And then we need to just relube everything, put the upper receiver on top, obviously relube the upper receiver, and the gun will be ready for testing. Now is the time for the gun to come alive, so let's connect this to the pressure. But first, obviously I didn't mention this step, but this is like mandatory. You need to put a ton of gear on the gun, you know, some lasers, flashlights, grenade launchers, everything you have in your house. So I already did that, and now as with all the VFC guns, it's on fire. I cannot put it on safe, so I charge the gun. This is the first step I do always. Obviously remember, relube it, I already said that. Now I can put it on safe, yeah, means that it's reloaded, it can be connected safely to the pressure, and I'm using the Redline Mini SFR 120 psi in this case. The conversion can take like all the others up to 140, let's say 145, but there is some tolerance on the regulator, so I don't advise going higher than 140 on the manometer. It's reloaded. I made sure that the chamber is empty, so now put it on fire and let's try if it shoots. Nice. It has no full auto, so the test will be quick. Let's shoot some more. Then the magazine, empty one. Let's see if the bolt catch works. Oh, wrong button. Okay, it works, and I can try holding the bolt catch down with my hand, shooting few shots and then releasing it to see if again it locks. Let's see. Okay, it locks. Yeah, so the gun is functional, everything works. Now let's chrono it, and for chronoing I will use 0.48 BBs because that's what I would usually use for a gun like this. And there is the NPAS in the gun. The whole gun is, let's say, stock apart from the conversion. So I'm setting the NPAS to 3/4 of the range, and the output will differ depending on the type of regulator, the pressure that you will use, obviously. So this is just an example. And this is it. Our beautiful M110 is fully functional. You saw how it shoots. Obviously, if you set the NPAS differently, apply different pressure or use different BBs, you can drive it. Also, if you replace the inner barrel to a better quality one, it will have much higher output. So purely depends on you. You can probably reach even like 5 joules, but I don't know if anybody will allow you to any game with that. Anyway, I hope you liked it. If you have any questions, then leave them in the comments. The video about the magazines and the data for the magazines will be coming soon. More guns are to come as usual, so subscribe not to miss them, hit the notification bell, give me a like, as I said, comment. I appreciate your support, and as always, may the power of GBBR be with you.